John Carlson, Blackjack Canadian Enterprises. You're about to watch me engage in inspection activity for the beta axial hoist using the manual provided for the hoist. Okay, so the first thing that we want to see is we got to check the area near and around the hoist and it is free of obstructions and trip hazards. So let's say that this is our work area. It is free of obstructions and trip hazards. Cut. Alright, so point number 4. Check that the control electrical box is properly connected to the motor pack. So, the middle cord follows around there and goes into the back of the hoist. This is the back of the hoist where it connects to, and as you can see it's plugged in, but let me show you what it looks like. So you can see what it looks like. That there's a 6-pin on both sides. Pay attention to the ridges right there. Those ridges go into those little points right there. So you got to make sure that it looks just like that when it goes in. So it plugs in just like that, and that part there goes in and it locks it in. It prevents this from being pulled out accidentally. Cut. Okay, point number 5. Check that the handheld control pendant is properly connected to the control electrical box. This here is the handheld control pendant, and you follow that all the way down to this part here. So this is where it plugs in, same as the back of the motor pack. You unplug it like that, and this here is once again a 6-pin plug. Pay attention to the ridges when it goes in, like that, and this comes over, locks it into place, and that is plugged in properly. That is the only connection for the pendant. Cut. Okay, point number 6. Confirm the top and bottom motor pack flip retainer locks are locked in place, securing the motor pack to the ladder track section. That is referring to these here. These are what's preventing this motor from falling forward into the work area. So there's one there and there's another one right here. And they spring into place, both of them. Okay? There's only 2. There's one right there and there's one on the bottom. Cut. Okay, point number 7. Check to make sure the pins securing the carrier basket to the universal carriage are inserted completely and contain safety pin locks. Okay, so just so everybody knows, this here's the basket, carrier basket. This here's the carriage. Carrier, carriage, carrier, carriage. Okay, so when talking about the pins, top and bottom, talking about these here. If you can see the connection, how exactly it goes together, there's one there and there's one at the bottom. This here needs to hold these together, and what's preventing this from moving out is this pin here. There's one on the bottom there, and there's another one. So those 2 are in, yes. Check. Cut. Okay, so point number 8. Confirm the sliding head is locked in place, secured to the ladder track section and no higher than the last scaffold clamp. That right there is what it's supposed to look like when it is locked into place. I'm going to zoom out and you can see that it is on the last ladder section. So that is it. That is true. That is what it's supposed to look like right there. Cut. Okay, point number 9. Check that all guide rollers are present on a universal carriage. Now, the manual says guide rollers, but you and I might say wheels. Guide rollers equals wheels, and on each part of the hoist there is 16 of them, 4 on each corner. So there's one there, one there, and one on the inside. I don't even know if you can see it, but it's right there. So those 4 on the left, on the bottom. These 4 are on the right, on the bottom. There's one there. There's another one. 1, 2, 3, 4. And 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so yes, they are all present. Cut. Point number 12. Check that all springs are in place on the slack rope assembly on the motor pack. So this is the slack rope assembly. This is the only spring that is in there. Now to check it, you just give it a few tugs like that, and then if by pulling it on this, you should be testing the spring to its full capacity to make sure that it does not come loose, it is not rusted. It's not going to break when you do that. If it does, it needs to be replaced, and got to test it so it snaps back, just like that. Okay, I'm going to get this out of the way. See, so just so everybody knows the operation of this, when the hoist is on load, it's like that. The minute the cable snaps or the hoist touches the ground and bottoms out, it goes like that, and it hits the switch, and this is the switch that shuts off the motor. Cut. Point number 14. Check that the wire rope is spooling properly and the wire rope will evenly reeve on the drum. So even though this cable is not hooked up like it's supposed to be right there, which connects to that part there, when you look at the drum, you see this part here where it's nice and neat, one right beside the other, and over here where it's like looks like crap. Okay, this right here, this area is what the wire rope is supposed to look like on the drum. This needs to be fixed. If this was an actual real-world situation, the drum would have to be unspooled, and this part of the drum would need to look like this, tightly wound, lubricated. So, even though this is a demonstration, this is what it's supposed to look like. Cut. Okay, so this part of the video will be coming from the Daily Beta Max Leo XXL hoist by the Site Docs. So I'm going to be reading through each of these points, and then I'm going to be going through them on the hoist. So yeah, cut. Okay, so point 11 on the Site Docs form. Wire rope is evenly and smoothly wound onto the drum. Even though this is not a perfect example of what the drum is supposed to look like, this section here of where it is evenly wound and smoothly wound, there's no gaps between the cable. It's nice and dry to lubricated to the touch, but this is what you're seeing right here is just because it's loose, it's not hooked up. This all this loose cable that you see right there would be non-existent on normal usage. You would have to take the slack out, you'd have to unspool the drum to get rid of this. So in the perfect world, the drum would look like this and not that. Cut. Okay, the next point on Site Docs inspection is a minimum of 3 wraps of wire rope are on the drum at all times. So you see these this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, 1 wrap refers to the wire rope going around the drum once. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, so because the connection is on this side of the drum, there should be 3 full lines of cable before you see the next line of cable going all the way up to the hoist pulley. So this here is all bare and empty, and there's 3 left. And the reason why there needs to be 3 left is because there's a connection which this wire rope attaches to, and if you have a maximum amount of weight on the carrier, that's going to put that much stress onto that connection and it's going to rip it out. So by putting 3 wraps onto the drum, what that does is you have all the weights attacking the drum and not that connection. Cut. Okay, next point on the site docks checklist is hooks and clamps are not deformed, cracked, or pulling apart. So what that's referring to is this shackle connection. So the drum hooks up to the shackles here by an eye loop, and this part of the shackle connects to this here. So you're looking at this in reality at that huge connection of the swivel, the shackle, and then the wire rope. So in this case, it looks fine. It's just tied together because it's demonstration, but it should look nice. And even though you can't see the connection right there because it's wrapped up in tape, it's not pulling apart. There's no damage to this whatsoever, and this would be in good condition. So this would be a pass. Cut. Okay, so the next form on the list is the hook catch spring is not bent or damaged. So that's referring to these here. When you're looking at the hoist, at the carriage, this is the mechanical brake. And when you push this, it releases the brake right there from touching. So when it's under load, it looks straight up and down, and that is released. It's not touching. The minute that you put slack into the line, it goes like that, and it catches the track on both sides. So that spring acts as the automatic brake. So if you want to check those springs, just touch them and just wiggle them around. Make sure that they're not going to break when you're doing this, because if they break when you're doing this, then they're going to break way up top. Okay, so the next point is wire rope has adequate surface lubrication and is not dried to the touch. So even though this is a brand new cable, it feels great, it could use some lubrication. Now, cable, when it's lubricated, it's going to look like this every single time. And if it's dry to the touch, then this one strand will overlap. It'll just grab it and it'll start going this way. When hoist is going up or down, and then it'll start going this way, and it'll bunch up in one certain area. It'll look something like this if it's not lubricated, but this is just loose because it's not hooked up yet. So there, I do have cut. Okay, so the next point is wire rope has adequate surface lubrication and is not dry to the touch. So just put your hand on there when everything is shut off and you're inspecting it, nothing's being used. This is brand spanking new cable. It could use some lubrication. It is somewhat dry. So lubricating the cable will make it look like this. So it's nice and neat when it's going up and the cable is reeving in. And this stuff here, just ignore that because it's not really hooked up yet. But if it does look like this is a result. If this is all tight, this would be a result of it being dry. What lubrication does is it makes a slipping, so that way it goes from one cable to the other, and it just slides right next to it. If it's dry, it's not going to slide next to it. It's going to grab it and jump around and go over here and over here and over here when you're going up. So there is a way to lubricate that. We'll go through that later. So the next point on our checklist is verify correct operation of the emergency up limit switch. The up limit switch is this one right here. It's at the bottom of the hoist. The down limit switch is on the top. The up limit switch is on the bottom. And this is what it looks like. So what happens is when the hoist is going up and it's going up all the way and it stops, that means one side's got to move and it will be the hoist. So if that carriage hits something and it stops, it just suddenly stops, then this is going to move up and it's going to hit that emergency switch and it's going to stop the motor completely. It's going to sound, and then that's it. So okay, so the next point is the electrical cable between the power source and the hoist should not exceed 100 feet in length unless optional booster transformer is being used. So what that means is this part that connects to the main power source, this cable right here should not extend way over there over 100 feet. And if it does, we need to use like I said, a power booster or thicker gauge cable. Cut. Okay, next point is electrical power supply cable between the power source and the hoist is a minimum size of number 10 gauge wire. Use a lighter gauge wire if unacceptable, and as heavier gauge is recommended. So what that means is the power source is way over there and it's plugged into here. The thickness of that cable needs to be number 10. The way that you find that out is by the markings that is on the actual cable. So if you can see it on here, there's markings on the cable. All cable has markings telling you what it is, how hot you can use it, and all the information, including if it's 10.3. And it says right there, 10.3 SOC. What that means is it is oil resistant. Okay, so even on this cable here, it's got stamps on it. This is the pendant control cable. The pendant control cable has stamps on it. Sometimes they're embedded. Like I said before, all cable has these markings, so you know what it is, what is inside, what type of gauge it is, everything. So that is good to go. Next point is electrical 20 amp twist lock connectors of the proper specification. So what that means is these here. These are the 20 amp twist lock. The other one has, I wish I had the other side here so I could show you how it just fits into there and twists when you lock it. That's what that's referring to. Next point is handheld control pendant is not cracked or damaged. So take a look at this thing here. All around it, there might be damage on this that you might be unaware of, and if it's on a rainy day, you could get a nasty shock. Make sure it's not cracked anywhere. Okay, so there we go. This is good to go. Okay, next item on the list is handheld control pendant raise lower buttons are not sticking and work freely. So naturally what that means is when you press it, these things should be working. Okay, so when you press down, when you let go, it should snap back up. Press down, it snaps back up. Press down, it snaps back up. They are not sticking, because if they are stuck in the up position, now you got to panic and you got to press the power control button. When you turn this, it snaps out like that. When you push it in, locks it. When you turn it, it comes out automatically. Okay, that's how they should look. Okay, so the next points are regarding to scaffolding, and they are all fasteners fittings are tight and secure, and then structural surface shows no signs of corrosion, and then scaffold is properly secured and braced, and then scaffold is properly balanced with the correct amount of counterweight ballast, and then that is it. So the scaffold structure that is holding the hoist motor, I usually put as the annotation, scaffolding has been assembled under the direct supervision of a qualified journeyman. The journeyman is always the one who is putting this together according to the engineered specifications for the company. And this scaffold in particular looks good, so therefore this is a good cut. Okay, so at the end of the checklist, you have inspector's notes. This is the part where you can say something about the hoist that is not covered by the checklist. And that could be anything with the noise that the motor is making. It's suddenly starting to smoke. It needs to be lubricated. You can make the annotation that the cable needs to be respooled, or you can tell when the cable has been respooled. You can also talk about the electrical cords here, that they are unplugged, they're wrapped up, where you're storing the electrical cords, anything like that. If they're missing, cracked, damaged, the transformer needs to be on the outside of the scaffold, not on the danger zone, but it needs to be on the outside of the danger zone. You can make any annotation with regards to the sliding head if they notice it up top. You can talk about the cable. Inspector's notes with regards to the hoist can be documented in that part of the checklist. That is it. Cut.